this. This is major, major blockbuster news because for the simple fact, they've been even Kathy Engelbert herself tried to downplay the Caitlin Clark effect like it wasn't real, like it was a fairy tale, like Caitlin basically tried to say that she did Caitlin a favor by having a league. Goes on to say the WNBA generated enough revenue in 2025 to prompt revenue share for players for the first time in history. All 13 teams will receive a total of $8 million to disperse amongst players.
The WNBA recently created history. The league made enough money to initiate revenue sharing for its players for the first time ever. $8 million is being given to athletes directly, and it is impossible to dispute the numbers as to why this occurred. Everyone attempted to minimize one name, one participant, and one effect until the receipts appeared.
Amongst players. WNBA made enough money in 2025. Katie Barnes was the one who broke this story. This is major.
Before we begin, here's the question. Do you believe that the WNBA players that played for 2 years minimized the Caitlin? Now that the financial figures are out, does Clark effect owe her a public apology? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Let's begin with the facts as they are doing all the hard lifting and don't require anyone's opinion.
Caitlin Clark effect was going to work out tremendously for the league. Now the numbers are starting to come out. Exactly how much to Caitlin Clark single-handedly, because everybody likes to give credit to other people. Angel went on a whole campaign for 2 years telling everybody, it ain't just her, it's me too. It's other people. Don't forget about me and my hype, my fans. I'm here to tell you, one face, one name, one effect just helped y'all finally get in the green, at least for 1 year.
After nearly 30 years of professional women's basketball, the Women's National Basketball Association, WNBA, made enough money in 2025 to initiate revenue sharing with its players for the first time in its existence since 1996. Go over that again. The league will give all 13 teams a total of $8 million to distribute among players for the first time in its history. Additionally, union executives declared that players will receive an extra $9.25 million from license fees earned since 2020. Video games, trading cards, jerseys, and other goods. Players should receive the money by June 1st.
CC single-handedly. I don't want to hear nothing else about other players, about other superstars potentially being a factor, because when you talk about Caitlin Clark, you better put some respect on her damn name. Union leaders also said on Sunday that they will be divvying up $9.25 million to players from licensing revenue generated since 2020 from jersey sales, trading cards, video games, and other merchandise. The union expects to share the money.
This was not a minor adjustment or a passing detail within collective bargaining discussions. It marked a defining turning point for a league that had spent nearly 30 years operating at a financial loss, relying on ownership groups to absorb deficits while holding onto the belief that growth would eventually reverse its fortunes. That shift finally arrived in 2025, and the reason is not complicated if we are honest about what occurred. Caitlin Clark entered the league. To be precise, the revenue benchmark that triggered this outcome was written into the 2020 CBA, with targets based on 2019 revenue figures projected forward at a compounded 20% growth rate and later adjusted to account for the COVID pandemic. For years, the league pursued that threshold and consistently fell short. Then Clark arrived in 2024, and the WNBA, which had been fighting for mainstream relevance since the Clinton administration, suddenly became one of the most discussed stories in American sports. Arenas filled to capacity, television ratings surged, sponsorship agreements multiplied, jersey demand skyrocketed, and merchandise revenue, which had remained relatively modest for most of the league's existence, began generating figures that even internal projections had not anticipated.
All CC jersey sales and trading card profits. Caitlin Clark 2024 rookie royalty WNBA flawless logo woman 1-in-1 sold for $660,000 Thursday night, becoming the most expensive card of a female athlete at a public auction. Caitlin Clark scored second biggest selling jerseys across WNBA and NBA's sales. Know what that means? That's the money they talking about. Out of that $9 million. You see it, don't you? It's in black and white, don't you? This is the money they talking about, bruh.
A single Caitlin Clark rookie card sold at auction for $660,000. Not a typo, not an exaggeration. $660,000 for a WNBA rookie card, making it the most expensive card of a female athlete ever sold at public auction. Her jersey ranked as the second highest-selling jersey across both the WNBA and the NBA combined. The NBA, not just her own league, placing her merchandise performance among the very top across both organizations. That surge in sales is directly reflected in the $9.25 million revenue pool currently being distributed to players by the union, and a substantial portion of that total is undeniably tied to Clark's impact, whether publicly acknowledged or not. The irony is hard to ignore. For 2 full years, many within the WNBA establishment appeared determined to complicate her narrative, to diffuse the spotlight, and to spread recognition as broadly as possible so that no single athlete would be identified as the central force behind the league's commercial acceleration. Commercial growth. Angel Reese led what effectively became a multi-year effort to emphasize that the spotlight was not solely about Clark, arguing that numerous players contributed to the league's rise and that its growth should be viewed as collective. She repeated that message consistently and across virtually every media platform available to her. Advocating for personal value is not wrong. In fact, it is smart business. However, the recently released financial data is not a debate driven by sentiment. It is rooted in accounting, and accounting is indifferent to perception. The jerseys that powered merchandise revenue tell a measurable story, with Clark's jersey ranking second in sales across both the WNBA and the NBA combined. The record-setting trading card sales point to Clark. The rookie licensing revenue centers on Clark's image and brand. The television ratings that brought networks back to negotiations with stronger offers spiked most dramatically during Indiana Fever games featuring Caitlin Clark. The $8 million in revenue sharing being distributed to players for the first time in league history exists because the WNBA finally surpassed a financial benchmark it had pursued for years, and the reason that breakthrough occurred in 2025, rather than in 2019, 2021, or 2023, is not difficult to identify. Even Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, who worked diligently to present the league's success as broadly shared and carefully managed the narrative around its growth, could not ignore the timing or the numbers that accompanied Clark's arrival. Throughout 2024 and 2025, even as the WNBA carefully managed the Caitlin Clark narrative, the revenue numbers tell an unmistakable story. When the league announces that it has reached a historic financial milestone for the first time ever, just 1 year after the arrival of its most commercially impactful player, the explanation is clear. The ironic twist is that some of the loudest voices downplaying Clark's influence are now directly profiting from it. Players who spent years on social media, in interviews, and across media appearances insisting that the league's growth was collective are now cashing checks that exist because of Clark's commercial impact. It stands out as one of the more ironic situations in recent sports business history. Stephen A. Smith offered insight that cuts through the noise. A rising tide lifts all boats. He emphasized that the smart approach is to ride the wave of whoever is generating attention, whether it's Clark, Aces players, or anyone else, and unapologetically benefit from it. He highlighted that success sometimes requires a marathon mindset rather than a sprint-focused perspective. That advice is sound, but it only works if you first acknowledge that a wave exists. You cannot ride a wave you have spent 2 years insisting is not real. Meanwhile, team owners have navigated a complex position throughout the entirety of this CBA negotiation, balancing growth, revenue, and the evolving dynamics that Clark's presence has created. These are individuals who absorbed financial losses for years, in some cases, decades, because they believed in the long-term potential of women's professional basketball. Their commitment was not purely charitable, yet it came at a significant personal cost. The argument that owners should automatically meet every player demand because women deserve higher pay is emotionally compelling, but economically incomplete. One can fully support fair compensation for women athletes while still recognizing that businesses operating at a deficit cannot ignore financial realities indefinitely. What shifted in 2025 is that the WNBA's business model finally approached sustainable territory. This was not due to a change in collective bargaining arguments or a sudden surge of generosity from owners. It happened because revenue arrived, audiences engaged, and the league's commercial ecosystem expanded in ways that generated actual money rather than speculative projections. That growth has a tangible face. In terms of the ongoing CBA negotiations, which had raised real concerns about whether the 2026 season would proceed as planned, this revenue development alters the landscape significantly. Players who had been steadfast in their demands, informed both by principle and by the financial realities they faced, now have concrete proof that the league can produce real revenue, fundamentally shifting the dynamics at the negotiating table. The union now has concrete evidence that the league can meet its revenue threshold, that the financial model works, and that it can produce tangible results, giving them solid grounds to advocate for improved compensation structures going forward. This leverage isn't about threatening to derail a season. It's about the numbers finally backing their position in a way that speculative projections never could. For players who have had to grind through modest career earnings, often relying on overseas contracts in the off-season just to make a sustainable living, the $8 million in revenue sharing is significant. Not life-changing for every player, but meaningful as proof that the league they've devoted their careers to can achieve real financial stability. What often gets overlooked in these discussions is the impact on mid-tier players. Those who aren't household names, aren't featured in national commercials, and aren't landing individual sponsorship deals. These are the athletes who most needed this revenue to materialize. The league stars are less affected. Their personal brand deals, overseas contracts, and endorsements already supplement their WNBA salaries, insulating them from these shifts. The middle of the roster is where financial pressure hits the hardest. These players are benefiting from Caitlin Clark's commercial influence without having been directly involved in creating it. They weren't riding the wave themselves and may have even resisted the narrative surrounding her impact, yet they are now receiving checks that would not exist without it. It's a complex reality that deserves recognition, even if it feels uncomfortable. Cheryl Swoops, for example, owes Clark an acknowledgement. Swoops was among the most outspoken critics of the attention and resources devoted to Clark, questioning her influence and suggesting that the focus on Clark came at the expense of other players. The newly released revenue figures render those criticisms not only inaccurate, but, in hindsight, genuinely counterproductive. Every day of skepticism about Clark's effect was a day the league could have leveraged it more fully and generated even greater financial growth. More of the commercial momentum that ultimately drove this historic financial milestone. The list of people who owe Clark some form of recognition is extensive. Critics who questioned the reality of her impact, commentators who insisted other players deserved equal credit for the league's growth, league officials who carefully managed the narrative to avoid highlighting any single player too prominently, and even teammates and competitors who leveraged media platforms to divert attention from Clark's commercial achievements. None of them necessarily owe a groveling public apology, but an honest acknowledgement of what the numbers reveal seems entirely reasonable. After all, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. In 2025, the WNBA triggered revenue sharing for the first time in its history, and the data makes it clear who drove that breakthrough. Just 1 year after Caitlin Clark joined the league, the merchandise revenue driving that distribution was overwhelmingly fueled by her jersey sales, trading cards, and licensing deals. The television ratings that made the 2025 season commercially viable were powered by Indiana Fever games. Not speculation, but accounting fact. For those who spent 2 years contesting that narrative, now cashing the checks generated by it, the very least they can do is stop pretending they don't know where the money came from. The WNBA finally reached a milestone it had never achieved before. Players are being compensated. The league has concrete proof that its model can succeed, and the reason for that success is clear in the data for anyone willing to look honestly. If this video delivered the message it needed to, hit that like button and subscribe.